Hello everyone, Kuro the Artist here with a special video for you today. For those that don't know about icebergs, they're lists of trivia based on whatever movie, TV show, musical artist, or whatever it's based on, with multiple layers to them. The fairly common knowledge is listed on top, and the lower you go down the list, the more unknown and obscure the trivia is. I felt like it was time to put together a Ben 10 video based on this trend, and while I have seen some people make Ben 10 icebergs before, if I was gonna do a video on one, I felt more comfortable just making my own. I started collecting facts for this over the past few weeks, and before finalizing it, I had some help from some of the Tanks server mods, so shoutouts to them, and thanks for the help. You could find all their information below. Now, some of the facts you'll see on this list, the Ink Tank and I have made entire videos on, so I'll be referring to them throughout this video if you'd like some more information on them, because with a whopping 8 layers to go through, I'm gonna try to keep things informative but brief. If you're interested in checking out the videos after this one, they'll be linked down below in the description. And of course, for the inevitable, why didn't you add this or what happened to that? There's just a ton of stuff, okay? I couldn't fit everything, and there's already a lot of trivia to go through. If there seems to be a significant amount of extra trivia people want pointed out, perhaps I can make a sequel to this video. But for now, let's just jump right into layer 1. Now, layer 1 is full of the very common knowledge about Ben 10. Even if you're not a fan of the show, you probably know a fair amount of these facts, but if not, these are the facts that people would most commonly know about the series. Mr. Smoothie. So starting in the second series, Alien Force and onward, Ben develops a passionate fascination and love for smoothies, coming from one of Bellwood's 22 local Mr. Smoothie joints. The Alien Force team, and later on Ben and Rook, can frequently be seen hanging out around these Mr. Smoothie locations, and it seems like every character eventually becomes a sucker for them too. Ben has more than 10 aliens. Yes, despite the show being Ben 10, Ben does unlock more than 10 aliens. 1,912,000 by the end of the series, to be exact. But this is something that's broken as early as the second season of the whole franchise, with Cannonbolt, the 11th alien, first showing up in early season 2. Master Control. Typically, Ben can only become one alien at a time, and afterwards has to wait for the Omnitrix to recharge to transform again. And there's many times where he simply just gets the wrong alien, be it the Omnitrix being faulty or his misunderstanding of the device. But when using Master Control, it allows Ben to change from alien to alien for an unlimited amount of time, and he always gets the right alien. Humongosaur and Forearms. These are two of Ben's strongest and most frequently used alien transformations. Ben is almost constantly trying to become one of these two aliens, and if it wasn't for the fact that Ben can mistransform, they'd probably take up about 90% of every episode. Heatblast was the first alien used. Way back in December 27th, 2005, in the first episode, And Then They Were 10, the very first alien transformation Ben becomes is a Pyronite, which he calls Heatblast. As you can tell by the name, he controls fire and has become a fan favorite all the way up to this day.
Couldn't have picked a different alien? What can I say? Heatblast is a classic!
Can name all 5 series. So throughout the franchise's run so far, there has been 5 series total. The first 4 all taking place in the same continuity, and the 5th one being a reboot. The first series is the classic one that most people are familiar with a 10-year-old Ben Tennyson on a road trip with Max and Gwen. The second series, Alien Force, taking place 5 years later, with a more experienced and powerful Ben. The third series, Ultimate Alien, basically continues Alien Force even further, and the fourth series, Omniverse, sets itself most apart with a drastic art style change and more of a focus on the multiverse. The 5th series, the reboot, starts Ben over at 10 years old again, and generally has a lot of controversy around it, mostly because older fans weren't satisfied that they didn't receive another continuation, opposed to reintroducing the show to younger audiences. Ben can scan aliens. While there's countless, and I'm talking hundreds of thousands of aliens still locked away within the Omnitrix, Ben can also expand his arsenal by scanning aliens he doesn't yet have the DNA of. So yes, if Ben met Goku, he can become Goku. I have a whole video on what would happen if Ben scanned a canon Dragon Ball Z Saiyan, and a video about our own take on what Saiyans would be like in the Ben 10 universe. So these facts are just a little bit more intricate, but still fairly well known. I'd say this layer is where people start calling themselves fans of the show. So first up, we got the Heroes United Generator Rex crossover. This is probably one of the most loved, most watched, and most talked about episodes of Ben 10 of all time, and it's not even an episode of Ben 10. In fact, I would argue like a fair amount of people haven't even seen Generator Rex that have watched this. And I'll admit, I was one of those people too. I saw this crossover before actually watching Generator Rex, and 10, it was kind of a mistake, because Generator X is a really good show. Got a video on that talking all about it as my #1 most underrated cartoon if you want to check that out. Again, I'm not just trying to plug all of my videos here, it's just I really have made a video on most of the stuff here, and they already do a great job explaining that stuff in detail if you're that curious. Ben 10 also had a crossover with the Secret Saturdays. This time they take place in the same universe rather than hopping universes. The Secret Saturdays was over for a long time when this happened, so it was a little strange that they even did this, but the episode does a good job catching you up on the Saturdays family if you don't know them already, so if you want to check it out, you can, and you know, it's pretty good. The Omnitrix was meant for Max. So this basically talks about the fact that when transporting the Omnitrix, Xylene ejected the device down to Earth and intended to give it to Ben's grandfather, Max Tennyson, who is noted to be one of the greatest plumbers of all time.
You didn't believe that I would purposely send the most powerful device in the universe to a child, did you? I was sending it to Max.
Now, there's a lot of debate on whether it was meant for Max because Xylene was sending it to him, or it was actually Azimuth's original intention for the Omnitrix to be for Max. That's a whole thing. But either way, Ben absolutely found it by mistake. Well, actually, that's not entirely true either, but that's a whole other thing too. Let's just not get into that right now. Omniverse Season 9 Road Trip. So the last episode of Omniverse in Season 8 ends with Ben planning on going on a road trip with Rook, Gwen, and Kevin. And it just seemed like a nice way for the series to come full circle, as it now starts and ends with a road trip. But there were actually plans to make a 9th season showing said road trip. And if it wasn't for Cartoon Network basically sweeping Ben 10 underneath the carpet for years, we may have actually seen that season. Albedo. Now, Albedo or Albedo, depending on which series you go by, yes, there are two different and canon pronunciations. It's a little annoying. He's a Galvin that wanted the Omnitrix and felt Ben wasn't worthy of it, and tried to make his own, but his Omnitrix needed to be synced with Ben's for it to work, making him turn into a clone of Ben. Some sci-fi mumbo-jumbo later, and now he looks like a reverse Ben. And he shows up from time to time basically being a mirror image of Ben, despite not actually being human. Ben 23. What is a human version of Ben, though, is Ben 23. Ben 23 is one of, and probably the most loved alternate versions of Ben. He's a Ben that grew up without the guidance of Grandpa Max and kinda grew up to be a little jerk. But since going on a few multiversal adventures with Ben Prime, starts to come around on the idea of what it really means to be a hero. Alien Extinction. Alien Extinction is an episode of the reboot that now acts as the series finale. It crosses over with a bunch of different Bens, each made to be a representation of the past 4 series. It's debatable about if these are actually Ben Prime or not. I have a whole video on that, but it does feature some of the best Ben interactions in the whole franchise. And even if you downright hate the reboot, you'll probably still like this special.
Alien X? As in X like mystery or X like the Roman numeral for 10? What? I know things!
Ben 10,000 and Alternate Futures. So as far back as the classic series, Ben has time traveled on multiple occasions, sometimes running into a future version of himself known as Ben 10,000. Although every time Ben meets his future changes because, you know, time travel and all of that. So we're left with 3 versions of Ben 10,000. One that stays pretty grounded to the plumber ideology, one that uses his powers while still in human form, and one that fuses together his aliens for a seemingly infinite amount of combinations. Gwen 10. As we expand the multiverse, there is a universe where Gwen found the Omnitrix. In fact, we've arguably seen 3. Gwen, being a little more level-headed than Ben, gets the hang of the device a lot quicker than he does, and is pretty diverse and dexterous with her aliens.
Careful! You could start a forest fire.
Only an idiot would set the forest on fire.
However, I would still argue that Ben is better with the Omnitrix just because he's a little more brave and daring. Sometimes you just gotta jump in with both feet. The Duncan Rouleau questions. Duncan Rouleau is one of the 4 people that make up Man of Action, the creators of Ben 10. And to this day, you can still tweet out at him and ask him questions about the series. Now, there's a big divide in the fandom on how much weight Duncan's word actually holds when answering all of these questions, but nonetheless, there's a lot of interesting information that he gives us, and we've even had the chance to sit down and talk to him in our Duncan Rouleau interview. So this is where people who really dig the show start pulling trivia. This stuff is generally not known outside of the Ben 10 fandom, but it's still not super rare knowledge. Derek J. Wyatt questions. As far back as Omniverse, Derek J. Wyatt, the art director for the series, also frequently answers questions too. Although he's not as accessible as Duncan, and basically like anyone you ask a Ben 10 question to, the validity of their word can be debated. Derek J. Wyatt has filled us in on a lot of great behind-the-scenes stories about developing Omniverse, and still does art for the show to please fans, and has recently raised over $5,000 in a Kickstarter to continue drawing art for the show. Derek J. Wyatt / Tom Perkins' New Aliens. Included in this new art is some new alien transformations for Ben and his multiple alternate counterparts. Sometimes these are recolors from Undertown aliens, but other times they're a completely new art. And Tom Perkins has also joined into the mix by drawing a bunch of name-dropped aliens and giving his own take on what their appearance might be like. Naruto characters cameo. 3rd season episode of Ben 10 Classic, Merry Christmas. You can see 3 characters that resemble Konohamaru and his teammates at the end of the episode. Alien X isn't the strongest. The reason this is its own fact we'll get to later, but Alien X, Ben's most powerful on-screen transformation, who can warp reality easier than we can breathe, is actually not Ben's most powerful transformation. What is? Well, we'll never know. But after first being stated by Dwayne McDuffie, many writers have gone on, and to this day still agree, that there are more powerful transformations in the Omnitrix. Mott Snickrep and the Upchuck concepts. So at the end of the 3rd season, we're introduced to Ben's new alien Upchuck, a gourmand, who had many variants drawn by Tom Perkins during his concept art. But a lot of these designs were reused for characters throughout the 3rd and 4th season. One became Arctiguana. A few of them became villains in Ken 10, and the most notable one is Mott Snickrep, which is actually Tom Perkins backwards. The Kai hate. So in the classic series, Ben meets this girl named Kai, who he thinks is into him, but actually only likes him for his alien transformation, Ben Wolf. And later on in Omniverse, it's confirmed that they are destined to end up together. And many people don't like that. Mostly because every time they're together when she shows back up in Omniverse, they're arguing, and we're supposed to expect they end up together. It's just not something that sits well for a lot of people. Perhaps because we've never actually seen a transition for them actually being kind to each other. And if I could have my way, I would have had Kai appear in that 9th season road trip, and that whole season could have been dedicated to building towards their relationship. But as of right now, all we're shown is somehow they're married in the future. Missing Omniverse aliens. So the 4th series Omniverse had the most amount of aliens shown. Practically every single one of Ben's aliens unlocked at the time appeared at least once or twice, but there was a fair amount of them that weren't shown. But recently, Derek J. Wyatt did do artwork for them as an example of what they could have looked like to have them in the show. The POTUS Altiari. One of the most famous Ben 10 games, Ben 10 Ultimate Alien Cosmic Destruction, features this device called the POTUS Altiari, which basically just enhances the power of the user. This device is surprisingly brought up a lot, and fans have been campaigning for it to show up in the canon in some way, shape, or form, despite it being turned to dust at the end of Cosmic Destruction.
I wonder how much power it has. I bet it lasts forever. Or slightly less.
Kevin's backstory. So there's a lot to unpack here, and we're not gonna do it in this video. But basically, Kevin's backstory is one of the most significant inconsistent things in Ben 10. While the first 4 series are canon with each other, they do tend to contradict each other quite often.
I never met your dad.
Me either.
That's just a picture.
Of me and my dad. It's one of the few reminders I have of him.
The Forge of Creation. The Forge of Creation is a special dimension that exists outside of the multiverse that can only be accessed with the Map of Infinity, or if you're some type of deity. This is where celestial sapiens are born and typically do their debating. Charmcaster killed Ben and his team. So in the Ultimate Alien episode where Charmcaster tries to revive her dad, she sacrifices all of the souls in Ledger Domain, including Ben and his team, who were present at the time. But out of all of the antagonists that Ben has ever faced, Charmcaster is the only one who actually has successfully killed Ben. And he would have stayed dead if Spellbinder didn't think what Charmcaster did was wrong and sacrifice himself to return everyone's souls.
Coming back from the dead really builds up a thirst. Who's up for a smoothie?
The 3 rules. The 3 rules refers to the core 3 facts that a transformation needs to be viable into the Omnitrix. We did a whole video on that for our 300k special. It goes into excruciating detail on exactly what Ben can and can't transform into, but it basically comes down to 3 rules. Is it intelligent enough? Does it have DNA? And is it different enough from Ben to count as a separate transformation? Now this is around the layer where you can start classifying people as hardcore fans. It's where we start to begin to enter theories, speculation, and deep lore cuts. The first being the Dwayne McDuffie forums. Now the reason this is a lot lower than Duncan and Derek is because unfortunately after the passing of Dwayne in 2011, obviously you can't ask him any more questions, and after his website shut down, many of the questions are lost to time, and most people kind of forgot about the forums. In fact, the Alien X isn't the strongest fact is put on a tier above this is because many people don't even know where that statement came from, and it's from these forums. Where is Bellwood? Now, Bellwood doesn't have a real location. Let's just get that out of the way off the bat. But it's still fun to try to speculate based on the facts we're given. Personally, I'm in the camp that Bellwood is in New York, but there's been arguments for Texas, California, even South Dakota apparently. The point is, we'll never know for sure, but it's something that people still constantly talk about. The reboot post season 1 is actually good. Now this entry is completely opinionated, but generally, people agree that the 2016 reboot does actually pick up after the second season, and by its last 2 seasons, is pretty well regarded by fans. During our interview with Duncan Rouleau, we learned that season 1 was heavily scripted, and with an 11-minute format, it is tough to fit what they're trying to do in such a small time frame. Whereas starting with season 2, they allowed the board artists to have more story input and give their own personal expression and flavor into the series.
The first season, it was with writers writing scripts, but then season 2, it was storyboard artists writing the bulk of the stories, and we would come in as story editors and change some of the dialogue, make sure the voices were right and whatnot. Storyboard artists got a lot more of the creative say in the pacing, the action, all of those kind of things that would happen.
And perhaps that's where the solid change into what the reboot eventually became started from. The first 4 series of Ben 10 were definitely family friendly, but generally can be enjoyed by anyone, whereas the reboot does make strong efforts to cater towards a younger audience, which is where the division comes from. But regardless, if you're a Ben 10 fan, I would give it a chance. Green Needle. So this is something that actually went viral, but was forgotten about just as quickly as it was popular. One of the Alien Force Omnitrix toys came with a feature where you plug in little mini holograms and it makes the Omnitrix say the alien's name. And when you did brainstorms, a lot of people would hear the words Green Needle. Sort of like the what color is the dress sort of thing, or the Laurel Nancy thing, or whatever it was called. Lanny? Lancy? I don't know. I'll put the screen cap right here. But this one did have a definitive answer, because obviously it's Brainstorm. Burger Shack. So in addition to smoothies, Ben also has a big fascination with chili fries. This is something prominent from Alien Force onward as well. But unlike Mr. Smoothie, where Ben actually gets his chili fries, isn't as well known, although it has shown up a fair amount of times, and it's Burger Shack. In fact, you can even find it in the Minecraft DLC. So it's kind of popular. Oh, you are in Burger Shack. Holy shit.
Is it Burger Shack? It looks like
Burger
a dojo.
Shack. No, this is Burger Shack, dude. Trust me. Celebrities in Ben 10. So Ben 10 has actually had some pretty big names appear in the series. Most notably J.K. Simmons as Magister Prior Glil, Mark Hamill as Maltruant, and Star-Lord himself, Chris Pratt, as Cooper in Ultimate Alien. The art style change is canon. So as I said earlier, Alien X can warp all of reality and exists outside of the multiverse. Well, this advantage is so high that the art style changes between each series is actually canonically their doing.
Celestial sapiens change the universe all the time. Why, even First Thinker Asma's voice and appearance has changed on at least 3 occasions.
The Annihilar Genesis story of Fimiagast. I had to memorize how to say that for the Ben 10 illustrated video, but the Annihilar Genesis story of Fimiagast, or the Annihilarch for short, is a small little box device that's developed by these 5th dimensional beings called the Quantumilia. If there's a blank dimension and they set off an Annihilarch in it, it will create a universe. But if there's a universe already in that dimension, the Annihilarch would destroy it. Pop-up trivia. For certain special events, Cartoon Network would air pop-up trivia versions of the Ben 10 Classic series episodes and its movie, Secret of the Omnitrix. Unfortunately, a lot of this trivia is lost to time. Although this trivia does answer a lot of unknown questions, such as how did the scare get in the Omnitrix, and certain locations that weren't pointed out in the episodes that the Tennysons stopped on, which definitely helps with my roadmap in my Ben 10 Breakdown series. Contest aliens. So this was more internationally, so here in America we didn't get something like this, but there were some contests where fans would submit their aliens aliens and they would get drawn in special commercials. One of the most notable ones was Portaler, who actually made it into an Omniverse-based video game. And whether or not they're actually canon is debatable, but they're still interesting to know about. Eon's backstory. So the Time Walker known as Eon is also someone with an inconsistent backstory. It's just not as elaborated on as Kevin's. But basically in his debut movie, he comes from a whole race called the Cronians, where after figuring out how to warp time and space, their lust for power caused their society to fall. So Eon wants to remake himself in Ben's Omnitrix and then take over the Earth.
I am the alien life form that will soon overwhelm you. I will be reborn in you.
In the series, it turns out Eon is actually an alternate version of Ben, who's going around and collecting or killing Bens to be the only Ben in the entire multiverse.
I'll finally have the strength to replace this timeline with a new one,
where I will be the only Ben Tennyson that exists.
But in the concept of the multiverse, there's an infinite number of Bens, so Eon will never truly achieve his dream, but hey. Props for trying. Anidites don't have DNA. In Alien Force, it was revealed that Max's wife and Ben and Gwen's grandmother is an alien named Verdona. She is what's called an Anidite, these powerful energy creatures that give Gwen a significant amount of mana for her spells. Now, because they're an alien, many people's first instinct is, can Ben turn into an Anidite? And it was told to us by Dwayne that Anidites don't have DNA, therefore the Omnitrix can't scan them. And as much as I like to harp on Dwayne's word, many fans, including myself, agree that it's kind of a load of bullshit. I mean, if Ben can have Alien X and an Nalgian, which are multi-dimensional beings, or artificial transformations like a Mechamorph or Nanomech, it kinda defeats the Anidite argument. I get that the writers just wanted Gwen to be special and not give Ben a way to have Gwen's powers, but the no DNA explanation, it's kinda, it's something. A lot of this stuff you may not know unless you're an older fan like myself. Most of this stuff has been around for a decade and has long been irrelevant. But let's start off with the most relevant thing. Yeah, it's kinda ridiculous, but I did put the ink tank in 5 years later on this chart. But I do this because I've heard countless times that the work we do on this channel has reignited a lot of people's love for the series. Many of people said they were completely done with Ben 10 until they started watching our videos, and the impact we have made on the community through things like the Goku video, the Death Battle video, and 5YL, which whether or not you've read it, you're probably aware of it. I do feel like the ink tank has at least earned a place on something like this. And I'd like to use this opportunity to thank you guys a ton for even giving me the confidence to put this on the list because of how much of an impact we've made on the Ben 10 fandom. The Stephen E. Gordon concepts. So Ben 10 went through a handful of different concept artists as they were still figuring out the show. One version of the show dealt with Ben turning into different superheroes rather than aliens, and a lot of these concepts were drawn by Stephen E. Gordon. We can delve a little deeper into some of the other concept artists, but these ones were probably the most famous ones. I-10 Special. So to help promote Alien Force, they did this half-hour special called I-10, where they showed off a bunch of Ben 10 fan videos, did a preview of Alien Force, showed a lot of trivia, and it was something that was lost to time for the longest time, but has recently been found. So if you want to go check it out, you can. It's online. The Lost Pilot episode. So this screenshot has been floating around the fandom for a decade, and can actually be matched to some of the earlier concept art done for Ben 10 as well. When we asked Duncan Rouleau about this in our interview, he said these concepts weren't real.
This is a fan piece. This had nothing to do with any development that I'm aware of. If there was some internal Cartoon Network development, somebody drew up some pieces, it's always a possibility, but then it never got any way beyond those kind of drawings.
These concepts' validity were confirmed on Twitter by Dave Johnson, one of the original character designers for Ben 10. Nonetheless, there's some early stuff out there that we have yet to see and would absolutely love to have a look at sometime. KJ March. KJ March is one of the earliest and one of the most popular Ben 10 fan artists, despite not drawing Ben 10 again for years. But if any of these images ring a bell for you, you know KJ March. But he's created some of the most memorable and long-lasting fan designs of all time. Power of the Omnitrix. The Power of the Omnitrix was a stage play that was put on internationally that gave us the aliens Rox and Squidstrictor. These aliens have confirmed to be canon and supposedly are going to be drawn by Derek J. Wyatt at some point, but they're significant because they weren't just in the show but also have some official artwork in the series style and action figures too. Ben 10 pivots. Back in the day, one of the most popular things for Ben 10 fans to do is create Ben 10 pivots. And by that, I mean using Pivot Stick Figure Animator to create little colorful silhouettes that look like whatever you can create, really. George Washington. In the Ben 10 universe, George Washington is one of the founding members of the Plumbers, and the legend of him cutting down the cherry tree was actually him cutting the rope that anchored Vilgax's ship to the Earth.
Back to the stars with you, beast! Thank you, Dr. Franklin.
Atomai toy reviews. Another thing that was popular back in the day, the channel Atomai would review Ben 10 toys, and they would get millions of views every single time. He became a pretty big figurehead in the fandom for the time being, and he still does toy reviews to this day. Hero Generation. Hero Generation was the working title for Ben 10 Alien Force. This is when it was about Ben and Gwen leading their own squad of plumber students, and it was referenced in the final episode of Alien Force to joke about what some fans thought about Alien Force changing the classic series of Ben 10 into.
It's Sumo Slammer's Hero Generation. It's a sequel to the original show, but they kinda messed it up. It's like 5 years later and the bad guy, Kenko, has teamed up with the hero, Ishiyama.
Blox's statue in the UK. At some point in time, a giant replica of Blox was made in the United Kingdom made out of Legos. It took about 15,000 people and actually broke a world record and used about 240,000 bricks. As a Ben 10 fan, this is a huge win. Everyone is a copy. So one of the most talked about events in the entire Ben 10 history was the fact that Ben recreated his own universe after it was destroyed, but rather than bringing everyone back to life or rewinding time, Ben actually just made an exact duplicate of everyone, meaning everyone and everything from the previous universe really is gone forever. And from that episode forward, everyone in that universe is a duplicated creation of Ben Tennyson. And to make matters even more complicated, nobody even believes him.
I was too late to save the universe, so I used Alien X to make a whole new one. I made an exact copy.
Of everything?
Yes, everything.
In the universe.
Including you.
Of course, until he's put on multiversal trial for this, but that's a whole thing. So this layer of the Iceberg is all the really obscure stuff. I'd say even hardcore fans might not know a decent amount of this, but let's just jump into it. The Limax Wars of 2017. So the fact that Max loses an arm is a vague piece of lore that's always weaved into Ben 10 every now and then. In the classic series, he's got a robot arm in the future. In an alternate timeline, he has a prosthetic arm. In the reboot, Maximilian has a robot arm. And in Omniverse, he has some plumber gear that resembles a robot arm. One of the lost pieces of trivia revealed that Max lost his arm during something called the Limax Wars of 2017, where the details of the event has been pretty vague, but supposedly this is the event that causes Max to lose his arm. Alien Force Season 3's original pilot. The tonal difference between the first 2 seasons of Alien Force and Season 3 is pretty obvious, and this was because the network asked the crew to change what their original plans for Season 3 were. Not too much is known about it, and I've been gathering facts here and there for a few months to eventually make a video on it, but basically it would have had to do with Kevin's mutation, the dragons returning, and doing the Cthulhu Dagon thing in Season 3 of Alien Force, rather than Season 3 of Ultimate Alien. Secret Room in Battle Ready. One of the most popular and no longer accessible games was Battle Ready on Cartoon Network's website, and there was actually a secret room there where you could run over and collect a whole bunch of different Sumo Slammer cards, and it said Ben 10 on the ground. It wasn't that big of a big deal, but when you found it, you felt special. Walter White at Mr. Smoothie. For only a few frames during one episode of Ben 10 Omniverse, you can see a worker there that resembles Walter White from Breaking Bad. Clockwork undid a crisis level event. So in the Ben 10 Omniverse episode, And Then There Were None, Vilgax successfully deleted the entire multiverse, aside from one single universe which he chooses to keep to rule. And as stated many times in the show, the multiverse is infinite, meaning that Vilgax successfully destroyed infinite realities. But in the second part, in And Then There Was Ben, one version of Ben was able to undo that wave and reverse everything using the alien Clockwork. So if you want to break it down to its bare bones, Clockwork reversed the destruction of infinity. Omniverse pupils in Something Zombozo This Way Comes. One of the most controversial design changes from Ben 10 UAF to Omniverse was the fact that Omniverse Ben doesn't have any pupils. Even in some up-close transformations, Ben is still not drawn with pupils. But they were actually shown once in the episode Something Zombozo This Way Comes when we zoom in onto Ben's face. Plumbers in the reboot. Plumbers existing in the Ben 10 reboot was something that was confirmed but never shown. And given that writer's statements has always been debatable, no one ever really cared about that fact. But in the series finale of the reboot Alien Extinction, it is actually confirmed that plumbers do exist in the reboot, and Reboot Max has been one this entire time.
The plumbers? Hello? Really?
Mr. Smoothie in Dubai. Simply put, there's a Mr. Smoothie in Dubai. I'd love to go. On our 7th layer, all of this stuff is undeniably deep within the Ben 10 fandom. I'd really be shocked if anyone outside of our little bubble of the Omniverse knows about this. Heatblast.net. Heatblast.net is a long-gone Ben 10 fan site that is so old I barely even remember what it was for. I just remember logging onto it, and I think you were able to download episodes on it or something. I don't know, I was 11, so I didn't understand piracy. There was like message boards and forums and news and all of that. You can probably check it out in the Wayback Machine, but the fact that we have social media nowadays, sites like that are kind of irrelevant. The Make It Fast video. There's this special animation of Ben 10 called Make It Fast, which features Ben using his 10 aliens to travel around a city, fight bad guys, and catch up in the rust bucket. It's very short, but very fascinating, and you can see it on YouTube right now. Omnitrix and Forearms in DC Comics. So there's 2 panels from DC Comics out there that is circulated around the fandom, one of them being a character wearing the Omnitrix just casually, and another is a Tetramandus shown as one of the Green Lanterns. The Joel Silver movie. Back when Omniverse was being hyped up, Ben 10 was set to have a theatrical film helmed by Joel Silver, and was even promoted alongside Omniverse, so fans were so sure this was gonna happen.
And a full-length theatrical feature from Joel Silver, the producer of The Matrix. More aliens, more adventures, more Ben. Ben 10 Omniverse.
And it didn't. Basically, there was a change in power, and the ones who now hold the rights to it don't really care for a Ben 10 movie. If there's any way we could convince them, a theatrical Ben 10 movie would probably be the coolest thing we've ever gotten. But for now, it's probably never gonna happen. 2 pyramid origins. So in Ben 10, there's been 2 different explanations for where the pyramids came from. In Destroy All Aliens, it was said to be made by the Tetramans. In Omniverse, it was said to be the Galvans, more specifically Blue Kitchen Driba. You can just chalk this up to the universe changing. It doesn't really matter. Ben 10 laundry service. Now, I really don't know anything about this fact other than this image existing. It's been circulating for years. If this was like a real place, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. But there's this picture advertising a Ben 10 laundry service, and now you're aware of it too. The Alien Swarm car giveaway. So in the second live action film, they remade Kevin's car in live action because of course Kevin needs to drive his car. And there was a giveaway where you can win Kevin's car to help promote the movie. And unlike most contests, you actually did hear about what happened to the winner. In fact, Xanderflix has a whole video on it if you want to check that out.
What was your first reaction when you found out you won?
I didn't believe it. I was freaking out because I've never won.
I feel that, man. I feel that. You won something now. You won Kevin's car from the movie.
But it's nice to know that Cartoon Network really did follow up on this contest. And there's some lucky guy out there who has Kevin's car. Omnitrix drawn with 2 buttons. So typically the prototype Omnitrix is only drawn with 1 button, used to be pressed, you know, just like that. But ever since the first episode, sometimes it's mistakenly drawn with buttons on each side. This has even made it onto some action figures, some props. I think it's even that way in Destroy All Aliens if I'm remembering correctly. And it's a little upsetting, but ultimately it doesn't matter, so whatever. But yeah, sometimes the Omnitrix is seen with a button on each side. The Ben and Rook rap. So what's interesting about this one is it was voiced by the official American cast, but I don't believe this was actually broadcast in America.
Oh yes, I always come for action to say Ben all the time. Now let's get the party going with Ben and Rook this time.
But there's a fully animated and produced rap video with Ben and Rook, probably just used as an international bumper, and I actually didn't come across this until about 3 or 4 years ago, and have not found a version in good quality.
And I be an R like Ben and Rook, cause it's R&B, rhythm and blues. It's like I've got the rhythm and you've got the blues. Seriously? I have had it! Earth cultures, I do not understand.
So our final layer is similar to the last one in intense obscurity, but it's just this much more obscure. Ben 7. So Ben 7 is an Indonesian bootleg soap opera show, where this character uses a magic belt instead of an Omnitrix. It's one of the handful of Ben 10 bootleg franchises out there. There's also, of course, the Ben 10 Alien Force ripoff movie, which interestingly enough was rendered in CG and doesn't look so bad.
سلام بنتن. حتما خیلی تعجب کردی که یه نفر قوی تر از خودتو دیدی. درسته؟
پس شما میدونین اون کیه؟
Gwen canceled spin-off. So this fact doesn't have a lot of validity to it, but it's at least well known enough to be on this list as a rumor or a theory. But in Omniverse, Gwen does get a significant amount of development there, showing off how Friedkin University works and her secret identity as Lucky Girl. And it was rumored that Gwen was gonna get an anime spin-off set at Friedkin University. There's a little bit more information on it, but that's basically it. I'm not even sure if this was real or not, but this has been talked about for some time now, and honestly, I would have been behind it if we got it. I think that could have been really cool. Ben Chip. So this was the working title for Nanomech during the development of Alien Swarm. Nanomech was gonna be called Ben Chip, probably following the whole Ben Mummy, Ben Victor sort of vibe. Thankfully, he wasn't actually called Ben Chip, but yeah, I don't remember how it got leaked, but I just remember who is Ben Chip being all over Dwayne McDuffie's forums back in the day, so that was a thing. Dropped plot lines. Ben 10 actually has a ton of dropped plot lines. Now, sometimes writers leave things open-ended so that they can come back to it in the future, but they don't necessarily have a plan for it. But some things were set up with intention to have a continuation in Ben 10 that they just never got around to. Such as the dragons coming back, whatever the pink eye thing was in the first episode of Ultimate Alien. I'm pretty sure they said they did have plans for another nanochip episode. I might be mistaken. Oh, and remember at the beginning of Alien Force when they made it such a big deal that Humungosaur scraped his knee, and when Ben turned back to human, he also scraped his knee? That was gonna be a whole thing, and then Season 3 came, and a shattered diamond head just turned back to a regular Ben, so we're already done with that. The backstripe. So, on one of Ben's original model sheets, he is drawn with a stripe on his back, and sort of like the Omnitrix button thing, this isn't actually canon to his final design, but he's still drawn with a stripe on his back every now and then, and this happens like all the time. Sometimes Alien Force Ben has a stripe on the back of his jacket, Omniverse Ben has the stripe on the back of his shirt, but Ben is not supposed to have a stripe on his back. Infinite Monkey. So in the Ben 10 tie-in comics, which again have questionable canonicity, Dr. Animo creates a monkey that becomes so powerful and sentient, he's basically a god, and he's called Infinite Monkey, and he basically just leaves. So he's out there, somewhere in the Ben 10 universe. There's Infinite Monkey. Feedback's theme was based on the Osmo Band song. So I actually didn't know this, but apparently Feedback's theme was based on a real song. I'll play a quick sample for you right here. If you want a link to the full song, it'll be down below. Reused Gwen screams. So in the classic series, it's no secret that this scream is reused by Gwen quite often. But what I actually didn't know and was pointed out to me is it was reused in Omniverse as well. That one recording session saved them a ton of time. That's about it for the trivia I have with this iceberg. You can have a link to the iceberg along with everything I mentioned I would elaborate on in the video down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. You can stay up to date with everything that I do on my social media or join the Discord for some community interaction. And join the Patreon for exclusive weekly updates on everything that we do, such as 5 years later and beyond. But until next time, keep it fizzy.